Hello, everyone. Let's talk about politics and governance. How is the US leveraging domestic policies and international alliances to counterbalance China's dominance in minerals crucial for the energy transition? In today's episode, we'll chat with Anastasia Ufimteseva from the Beatty School of Business of Fraser University in Canada to explore the geopolitical and geoeconomic rivalry between the US and China over essential mineral resources for the energy transition. We'll look at how the US is using a combination of domestic policies, alliance building, and other ways to reduce its dependency from China, known as de risking strategies. Hi, Anastasia. Welcome to our episode.
Hi, Jose. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to discussing the paper that we wrote.
So let's start, and I'll start by asking you what drew you to explore the de risking strategies of the United States regarding China and its mineral resources?
Excellent question. We started with, as you know, media would be covering U.S. China rivalry almost in every day, right? You see news about technology competition, industrial policies rising to promote specific sectors. And we were really interested in seeing that environment where you have counterbalancing by the U.S., developing domestic and international policies to really tackle on the rise of China across multiple sectors. And one of the sectors that really drew our attention was critical minerals. We saw an array of political responses coming from US and its allies in the face of critical mineral policies. And we saw those rapidly evolving policies taking root. And the question that we really try to address in this paper and worked on is how US really took on those economic policies to counterbalance China, not just domestically, but also how they used international frameworks to really address the competition with China. So that was the driving force behind our paper, Jose.
And after completing the paper, what do you feel were the most relevant policies and strategies adopted by the United States in this scenario?
Yeah, so we we ran through a series of documents and policies published by all of the Five Eye Intelligence Alliance of the US, as well as the US. And some of the policies that we really saw took on, so not only there was a series of critical mineral policies and strategies adopted by every single country, but also, for example, the United States has developed industrial policy, the Inflation Reduction Act, where they really zoomed into the critical minerals as a specific sector to be promoted. In addition to that, trade policies rose again to promote, um, in a way, sorry, let's rerun. Trade policies have arose to promote certain relationships and encourage trade investment with alliances. So U.S. and Australia, U.S. doubled down on the relationship with Australia and with Canada to promote really this alternative critical mineral supply chain. We heard the words such as friendshoring, right, making sure that you trade and supply critical minerals with alliances, and a lot of the policies took really on. And you would hear China being mentioned in some of the policies as a big source of critical mineral control, and you have alternative policies to ensure that you're able to produce diversified supply chain of those critical minerals to the US.
Absolutely. And so by, through your paper highlighting these strategies that are being undertaken right now, how do you think that this can influence public policies, institutions, and even companies worldwide? How are they acting upon these decisions by the US government?
Excellent question. So, any policy that is really announced, businesses take it as a signal, right? Once you have that signal, you will really adjust your policy. Where do you invest? Where do you trade? That influences you on the day-to-day basis, right? If a policy comes out saying, oh, we don't want investment by particular entities, such as state-owned enterprise and critical minerals, you would have a rapid drop in investment or at least delay when the businesses try to figure out how to address it. And so you might have in a short term, decline on capital being available in critical mineral sector at the time where it might be needed. At the same time, those policies are driven by national security lens, right? So you're trying to make sure that you protect the specific sector to ensure that you have the businesses that you want in there in a way, the businesses that are friendly to your goals and policies, as well as when we see it, for example, in Canadian case, right? We had the Canadian government announcing policy to reduce or increased screening for state-owned enterprises in critical minerals, and we would see accordingly a decline in investment by state-owned enterprises because it acted as a signal preempting the future investment of that kind. Another aspect that I wanted to highlight is the really effectiveness of policy alignment. In such a short time frame, we saw similarity in keywords and wording across the 5 policies, which was quite interesting to trace. The level of communication between the policies, you can really read some elements that were really reinforced by one country from another. So that was quite interesting for us to see how policy really feeds from one country to another. Yeah, so those are the
And
two.
so what's next for this research? So by you've underlined and you've highlighted the main ways in which they are acting upon this topic. So I guess we just wait and see how if their results are what they expected. How do you feel like we should tackle these situations in the future in a research
Absolutely.
perspective?
Yeah, it opens a lot of questions, right? When you look at a policy, it's hard to judge when you're analyzing policies how much of it is going to be really implemented. So really implementation would be the next path for research, right? Once you analyze policies, you see the direction, you see the signal. How does it really carry on in practice? I think will require future research. For example, when we were carrying our analysis, we noticed New Zealand being at a lower adoption rate, as we saw it. So they had discussions already on critical minerals list. We saw that New Zealand was thinking about critical mineral policies, but it was not at the same pace as the other countries. So definitely there is future research following on New Zealand. There's another possibility to explore, for example, other countries' adoption of similar policies. So we have closer alliances in Japan and European Union. So there's likely, and we see some of the possibility for them picking up similar policies, right? There is collaboration we see between Canada and Japan, for example, critical minerals, Canada, South Korea. So there's a lot of momentum in this sector. And I feel like there's a lot of research needed to tackle all of those questions and collaboration between countries in
Uh,
de-risking specific.
And while you were compiling these main strategies, did any of them come as a surprise? Was any of that not expected, or are we just observing global powers doing what they do, preserving their interests, or was there something that was a bit out of the norm, in your opinion?
Great question. It was interesting because we're seeing the similar trends, right? We're seeing the increase of national security in different sectors, right? Critical minerals becoming something that is essential to national security, right? A lot of policies started expanding the national security lens, which is quite interesting. And I'm curious to see which sectors are going to continue, whether the concept and ensemble will expand. As you know, there is some analysis saying de-risking in specific sectors, industries, we have technology, right? We know critical minerals is essential. We have electric vehicles now starting to be really important. So it's really, really interesting to see this momentum picking up, and critical minerals is just one aspect of that. So I'm really curious how countries really adopt that concept and go with it, and how important it is for economic policies, because it does really affect how countries trade, how countries invest, how businesses carry out day-to-day business. So it really has such a big envelope
Mm.
together that it will require much more research and much more definite work on exploring those concepts and terms.
Exactly. And they're getting more and more politicized as well. They're
Yeah.
not just economic factors or resources, they become much bigger things
Yeah,
in a country's political spectrum. Um,
absolutely.
so we're reaching the end of our lovely conversation, and it's our tradition on the show to ask you to if I joined this conversation just now and you only had 2 sentences left, what do you want our audience members to take away from our conversation today?
Yeah, I think I'll pick up on our previous conversation about the rise of de-risking and, national security expanding. I think it's really important to understand that, increasingly countries are becoming more protectionist in terms of their resources. And so we see a lot of economic policies changing. So it's important to understand both geopolitical environment in which economic policies are being made domestically, and how countries adopt their domestic and international policies to align their strategies to, for example, counterbalance a rival power and de-risk their resources or change their supply chains. So I think that would be more than 2 sentences, but that would be the main takeaway that I would suggest.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anastasia, for accepting our invitation. It was truly a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Jose.
And if you are watching us on YouTube, you can find all the resources and materials of this conversation on the Let's Talk About Politics and Governance website. You can also listen to this episode wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe to our newsletter, and follow us on Twitter at CogitatioLTA. And I'll see you on the next one.